Please do not mind my aggressive farmer's tan. Don't look at it. Let's talk about a movie that is gaining in popularity and people seem to be talking a lot about right now, In a Violent Nature. This is another kind of smaller release of the year that got a theatrical release, much like Late Night with the Devil. So kind of more of an indie movie. It will be streaming on Shudder, I imagine, in the next coming weeks. So this is the directorial debut of Chris Nash, who also wrote this movie, and he has done other things such as, I laugh because of what he's done, ABCs of Death. He did Z for Zygote. When a group of teens take a locket from a collapsed fire tower in the woods, they unwittingly resurrect the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by a horrific 60-year-old crime. The undead killer soon embarks on a bloody rampage to retrieve the stolen locket, methodically slaughtering anyone who gets in his way. So the most unique thing about this that people noticed right off the bat from the trailers was that we are obviously following the killer the whole time. So we are watching this movie from the perspective of the killer. And like I've mentioned before when I've talked about this movie before it came out, this isn't the first time a movie has ever done this, but it is kind of the first time we're watching it from a slasher movie perspective, or like within a slasher movie, which is unique and cool. Now, a lot of people have been comparing this movie to Friday the 13th because how could you not? It seems very inspired by, although I don't know if it is directly inspired by that, but it definitely is comparable to Friday the 13th in some ways. To me, the villain in this reminded me a lot of Michael Myers in the way that he never runs. He's just casually walking and will eventually catch you, right? So it's reminiscent of like Jason Voorhees meets Michael Myers to me. That seems to be, actually that is the villain to me, is like those two combined. So not a super unique killer. However, the killer design was really cool. I love the mask that they chose to use in this movie. So where this movie is really unique is not just the filming perspective of the killer, but it is very subtle. I can't even say that, but it's slow. It's a slower burn. And it is done in a very artistic style, which is definitely not going to work for everyone. Not everyone's going to love that filming style and like the slower pace of this, the long, super long shots and long scenes dragged out, in addition to being in the perspective of the killer. So it's different in those two ways from other slash movies that we know of. And this movie, as far as my opinion goes, I don't really know how to feel about it. I don't know if it really works for me. I have a lot of respect for this movie, but I don't know if it really worked. I love the idea of this movie. I think the concept alone is really interesting and very unique. And I love anything that tries to be original, and I have a lot of respect for that. Now, when the movie started and we're like getting into it a little bit, I was really into it. I loved the long shots, the dialogue taking place off camera. We're just looking at the locket in the beginning. It's very long shots, and we get some backstory from those scenes. And then the killer arises, and we start following him through the woods. Very low key. It was honestly very calming and very relaxing. You have the birds chirping and like the forest ambiance. And I was like, ooh, this is such a mood. This is a vibe. And I was really in the mood for something like that. Something very low stress, low anxiety, no jump scares, just very calm. It's a calm movie for the most part. You know, almost like a comfy watch. Like I'm just very comfortable chilling, watching this killer walk about the woods. Until it's not a comfortable watch. You know, it is a horror movie after all, so there are some uncomfy scenes. And that juxtaposition was done really well. I think that was my favorite part, is you get the low stress atmosphere of following the killer because there isn't really a lot of suspense building or anxiety because we are following the killer. We know where he's going, what he's up to. There's no suspense of like, where is he? Where's he gonna come from? What's gonna happen? We have a little bit of that because we know he's obviously going to kill these people, so we are interested in how that's going to happen. But for the most part, low stress, low stakes, we're just chilling. And then it kind of ramps up in the kills. The kills then become the horror aspect of this movie, and they shock you. And they definitely push the limits and like push the gore and the kill scenes to make it shocking. And that is, I think, what people are mostly talking about within this movie, is not only is it uniquely filmed, but and like having a unique perspective, but the death scenes. and the kill scenes are very, very intense. And I was warned before I even saw this movie, be careful, some of the scenes are very reminiscent of like Terrifier 2, like very, very violent. I will go into specifics on a couple of the deaths in spoilers in this video, because I do want to talk a little bit about, you know, things that'll spoil this movie. So check that out later. Now, the thing is about the kills, they don't look fantastic. That's the struggle for me, I think, is they as brutal as they are, they don't look that realistic. But the situation in which they take place is very intense and disturbing, so it doesn't necessarily take me out of it, the fact that they don't look great. But you could tell that, like, when it came to the bodies and whatnot, that it was a dummy, you know, it was like a big doll. You could kind of tell. And while our killer is super, super strong, right? He's a corpse, so he has superhuman strength. The bodies still did not have that like weight to them that bodies would. So yes, he is strong and throwing them around like a rag doll, but they still need to look like they have some weight behind them and they actually are like bodies of human beings. Beyond the juxtaposition being my favorite thing about this, between the calming aspect and the shocking nature of the kills, the setting was so beautiful. I looked up where the filming location was after this movie because I was like, it is so gorgeous, and naturally it's in Ontario, Canada, in the woods, and it is just stunning. It's beautiful where they chose to film this. A lot of the scenes were breathtaking, like this, very beautiful, and you know, we have the silhouette of the killer with the beautiful sunset in a field of flowers, and he's just walking through this field of flowers. It was so cool. I really liked those shots that they achieved in this. It was very beautiful. I will say this movie felt so much like a video game at first, or for a lot of it. It feels like we're playing Dead by Daylight and we're like a killer hunting these, you know, kids running around. And I didn't hate that. I love Dead by Daylight and I love video games, so I thought that was cool. It is interesting that the writer-director is not actually a gamer, because that was asked in an interview, like, this kind of feels like a video game, do you play games? And he doesn't. So I thought that was interesting that he managed to achieve that, almost like he was inspired by video games, but he clearly wasn't. So I thought that was interesting. It feels kind of like Dead by Daylight in a movie form. Now, where it kind of loses me is definitely within the story, and I wish they didn't even have any of the story. I would have been content not really knowing much about the killer or these people involved or adding characters. We don't need all of that. I feel like they should have kept it very simple from the killer's perspective, because the killer knows everything that happened in his past, whatever. We don't necessarily need to know that as a viewer, and I think they should have kept it really, really minimal dialogue even, just keep it simple. But it became a little bit convoluted and a little bit hard to follow sometimes. Some of the dialogue just went on for so long that I just didn't care. Normally I like a good backstory, a good story in general for a movie, obviously, but this is one case where I feel like it wasn't necessary. If you're gonna go artistic, like make it artsy fartsy in that situation. I think we haven't really seen an artistic slasher done like this, so lean into that and make it really artsy. But they pushed the story a little bit too much, and I didn't really follow. Didn't really love that. And, you know, I feel like the story wasn't even that important. It feels very derivative. A lot of elements of this feel derivative of other slasher movies, so I wish they kind of leaned into making it more original and unique, because they had so many other original and unique elements going on that they just should have like pushed that a little bit more. Also, the performances weren't super strong, I'm not gonna lie. These characters, again, making stupid decisions. That's one of my things in movies, when they're just so stupid and they have no survival instinct. What's going on? That like takes me out of the movie a little bit, when they just won't run away or insist on surviving and they just give it for no reason. These characters are just stupid. All of them end up alone at some point, and that's just not realistic in this situation, especially after you've discovered someone has died. You just wouldn't be left alone. They always insisted on separating, even before someone died. And again, not realistic. You're in a cabin in the woods with your friends. When would you ever be alone? Like, why would you be swimming alone in a lake by yourself? That just wouldn't happen. So that's, you know, again, another thing that I just didn't love is stupid characters and not great performances from those characters. I feel like this movie had so much potential, which is why it's really hard for me to rate or really review, because the potential was so strong. And again, I respect the concept, the originality of this, and the unique perspective and all of the artistic choices made. I thought it was beautiful, loved the atmosphere. I might even find myself rewatching this just because of those things. But I just feel like the concept wasn't really executed well, and I think it's just going to be a hit or a miss for most people. But I do respect the writer, director for trying something new and something different, you know, something we haven't really seen before. So let's get into some spoilers about this movie and some of the specific death scenes and kill scenes that people are talking about and why this movie is so gruesome. And we gotta talk about the ending because I hated it. Hated the last 15 minutes of this movie. So we're gonna talk about it. Let's talk about the kill first. The number one kill that everyone is talking about. Some people say, you know, someone vomited at the film premiere or something. Again, don't know if that story is true or not, but there's rumors that someone, you know, threw up. I don't think it's that worthy of that or nausea-inducing necessarily. I'm pretty sensitive to gore these days, but this one didn't really bother me in that way. There was obviously the one scene that was really hard to watch, so let's talk about it. So the ranger, the park ranger, ends up being a character in this, and the killer paralyzes him and then takes him to the wood cutter, the wood splitter, and turns it on. He splits a piece of wood first, probably to demonstrate to us and the ranger, like, this is what I'm about to do to you. And then he proceeds to put the ranger's arm in the machine. And because the ranger is completely paralyzed but still alive, we know that he's feeling everything. He just can't express any fear or screaming or fighting back or anything. So this death is much more conceptually disturbing than visually, although visually it is as well. And this sounds morbid, but I wish they kind of pushed it a little bit further. So he cuts off his arm and then he cuts off his head. I feel like maybe it would have been too messed up and too gruesome, a little bit too Art the Clown if he just kept cutting off limbs. But I feel like that would have been more intense than just like the one arm and then his head. You know what I mean? It was still horrifying. Do not get me wrong. It was so disturbing and unsettling to watch because it was just like endless. It was just going on, and like obviously the ranger's eyes are moving around and you know he's probably petrified, but still, I feel like they could have pushed it. Is that weird? Am I the only one that thinks that? Because I don't know. One of my favorite deaths was actually when the guy gets his head cut here, right in half from his mouth with the little machete, you know, cuts his head off. And that's the body that looked fake to me, that looked like a dummy. But there was a really cool shot that was actually released as a teaser, I believe, or something. I saw it on social media before I even saw the movie. And he's carrying the guy's head from his jaw and holding his top of the head. And I really liked that scene. I thought that kill was really cool and intense, you know? And there was a lot of head trauma in this movie. I'm just gonna give you a warning on that. A lot of head trauma. He goes to town on this person's head who is obviously dead, but he's just still going and going and going. He does not stop for a long, long time. And eventually it becomes off camera, but we can still hear it happening and it's intense. There's a head with a rock scene. Okay, that's one of the death scenes. But it was interesting to see like how quickly he would kill some people and how some people he would torture. I don't know how I feel about that. How some of the scenes he just like smashed someone's head, and other scenes he like tortured the ranger. Probably because he had a history with the ranger. But yeah, the ending. What the fuck was that lady talking about for like 15 minutes? I'm sorry. I did not enjoy this ending. It was just going on and on and on. And I didn't, what are we doing? What is she talking about? Again, this is like the attempt at all this story building or making tension. I don't really know, because in the last act, we're not following the killer anymore. He gets his locket back and then I guess he's content. He's fine now. So then we follow the final girl and she gets rescued by this lady in a truck. And then the lady in the truck is just going on and on and on, just talking, and it's just so boring. And normally I don't care about like exposition and like story and stuff, but the fact that it's at the end of the movie and then it just ends, I just didn't love it. It felt like a weird ending for this movie, and I wish they did something else with it, or ended it previously, or ended with her just being rescued and just left it at that. But I don't know what was going on with this ending. If someone wants to explain it to me, like, I'm stupid, because I just didn't get it. And it really took off like a whole star for me from my rating, because this is just such a weird way to end the movie, and felt so disjointed from the rest of the movie that it didn't do it for me. I'm sure it's fine for some people, and I'm sure it didn't, ruin the movie for others, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. So overall, the movie was fine. It was fine. I don't really love it. I don't hate it. I give it like 2.5 stars. It's like right in the middle, because it had great ideas, great concept, great artistic choices, but then it kind of ends there, because the story wasn't great. The performances weren't great, and it just wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be. But hats off to the director for attempting something new and something interesting, and, having people have a conversation about it. Because I think it's really cool to see something so unique be made, especially in the slasher genre, that we haven't really seen something new in that genre for a while. So it was fun at least to see that. So anyway, those are all my thoughts. Let me know if you've watched this movie and what you think about In a Violent Nature, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.